Dear Piggy's YouTube channel. So we are going to be starting a new course. So how exciting, right? We are going to be working with HTML, CSS in this entire YouTube course. So it'll be quite a few videos talking about how we can create a web page and design the elements. And we are essentially going to make our own web page, make our own websites. We're going to make things happen. So I hope you enjoy this course and let me know if you have any questions. In this first video, we are going to be talking a little bit about what HTML is, what HTML CSS actually is, what they're used for, as well as the formatting, the structure and things like that. And finally, we're going to talk about the syntax a little bit more. So this is all kind of like the starter, beginner, basic knowledge that you need to know to get started. So HTML and CSS, what are they? There are two languages. They go hand in hand. Sometimes they go together with JavaScript, but that's a different course. And they're used to design and create the static components of a web page. So think about it this way. Most websites that you go to, what you see that's going on, whether it's the pictures, the font, the colors, anything like that, the images, everything is HTML, CSS. So of course, those are professionals. They've gotten through lots and lots of training to make it look like that. But essentially, we're going to be learning these two languages that help us design and create the static components. And so what static means is the things that nothing is going to happen to them. They're essentially just like a really pretty picture, but nothing is going to they're not going to do anything, which is totally okay because that's what JavaScript is for. But HTML and CSS are used to create the pretty pictures that you see on your screen. Okay, and HTML is used to create the elements. So what you see, it not necessarily is exactly all HTML. However, when you use CSS and HTML, you can use CSS to style things. So that's when you can change the font, the color, the size, and things like that. All right, so enough with the introduction. Let's jump right into a little bit about the HTML5 doc type format. So let's go ahead to Replit, and Replit is going to be the in-browser IDE that we're going to be using. Now, it's great because it has so many different languages, but you need an account. This account is completely free, and I think Replit is a pretty good website to register for. So go ahead, create your account, and then click the New REPL button. Choose your language, HTML, CSS, JS. Now, I have this favorited. You might not have it favorited, which is totally okay because you just have to scroll down a little bit and you'll see it. Since HTML, CSS, JavaScript are all popular languages, they'll be somewhere towards the beginning. So click on HTML, CSS, JS, and then name it whatever you want, and then create your REPL. Now, the first thing that we see here when we create our REPL is some weird stuff, right? I know this is really confusing. It looks kind of weird. I don't know what it's used for, and I'm pretty sure you're really confused too. When I first saw this, I thought this was the most confusing thing in the world. I didn't understand what was going on at all. But here's what I'm going to tell you guys. Most of this, you will never need to touch it at all, right? So about half of this, you will never need to change it, and most of it, you just need to understand why it's there, but you really don't need to go into the nitty-gritty details about it. So let's take a look here. The first things that we notice are that most of the things here are wrapped in these angle brackets, which are kind of like these greater than, less than signs, and there's an awful lot of them. And we will get to that in a second about what that is, what it's used for. But the basis of HTML, CSS are these angle brackets. So these are very, very, very important. And they're kind of hard to type, but we're going to get into the habit of writing these angle brackets. Second thing we noticed here is that I guess the second thing that I would notice is that there's a lot of random text in the middle here that looks all bunched up. Well, guys, I'm going to give you a little bit of a freebie hint here, but most of the stuff that's in this part, do you see where it says head over here and head down here? You're never going to need to use that ever. So everything over here, you don't need to touch. So everything that I'm highlighting right now, you can just ignore that. So here's what I want you guys to think of it as. I don't know if you guys have ever written an English paper or an English paragraph or some sort of writing. You don't just start writing. you have to usually think of a structure, and there's like some sort of outline of where you should write, like maybe you have an opening, 3 or 4 body paragraphs, and a conclusion, right? This is essentially what it does. This bare-bone HTML shell is telling you where you should put your code. So everything that's going to be in our HTML code is going to go in this body tag. Now, this is just my own personal preference, and I will be changing this every time, but I prefer to have this JavaScript, this line of code, outside of the body tag. This is extra information, but this is actually part of a different language. So in order not to let that bother us, I've taken it, I've cut and pasted it onto the separate line, and everything, all the good stuff, everything that we'll be using to design, or at least create the elements, are going to go in between these 2 body tags, where it says body and then it has a slash body. Everything, all the good stuff goes right in there. So it doesn't matter if you understand what all of this stuff means, as long as you know that all of the HTML goes in between these 2 lines here, where it says body, then you're good to go. Okay, so now that we've gotten a basic look at what the doc type format is, we just know that it's basically an outline or a bare shell. We can get into a little bit of syntax. So we talked a little bit about the tags. At first, we were kind of confused about what the angle brackets were about, right? So let's take a look here. All HTML, as we know, goes into these body tags, right? But there's one thing that I want to bring to your attention. These tags, if you notice, if you look carefully, they seem to come in pairs, right? You'll see that this body tag is like this, and there's another one, almost the exact same, except for the slash. So this is one pair. Now you'll see there's another pair where it says head, and this head with a slash, this is another pair. HTML, HTML, it's another pair, right? So another observation that we've made is that these weird looking tags come in pairs, and that's going to be very, very, very useful for us to know in the future. So one thing that I cannot stress enough, so many times when I see beginner HTML coders, one thing they always forget to do is to close the tag. So this is what I mean by open and close. This is how you create a tag. You would do the less than, the tag name, and the greater than. And this is how you close a tag. You would do the less than, the slash, and then the tag name, and then the greater than. Right? So this is a pair. One common mistake that I see so much is I see many people writing the opening tag and they forget to close it. And that just makes our computer really confused. So we have to remember that every time you open a tag, you need to close it. That is going to be something that I'm going to be repeating throughout the entire course. Every time you open your tag, do not forget to close it. There are special instances where you do not need to close it, but they're special, okay? So most of the times we're going to be closing our tags. The next big topic that we're going to be conquering are elements. So elements are something that we haven't exactly gotten to yet. That's going to be the main topic for our next video, but they are the different parts of what you see on the screen. If you see some text on the screen, that itself is an element. Now, we don't see anything right now because there are no elements to be found because our web page is empty, but when our web page starts to become alive, we will see different elements. So if you noticed before how I wrote tag name over here, this is the structure, tag name, ... close the tag. This tag name, this is an element. So if you hear me say the paragraph element, it would be one of these tags that lets you write a paragraph. If you see me say the header element, it would be the same exact tag, except for it would have some sort of tag name inside. So an element are pretty much the same thing as the tag names. Just think of it that way. Whatever elements that you use, they're going to be corresponding with your tag name. So that is an HTML element. Most of the times, the elements will be very easily related to the tag names. However, there are some cases where that logic just flies out the window. But when we start with the elements, at least for now, you'll be able to relate them. So like, for example, the paragraph tag, the paragraph element, the tag name is P. So P is paragraph. That kind of makes sense, right? So that was just one example that I wanted to show you guys. The paragraph element has the tag name called P. So let me write this out for you. We'll go into more detail about this next time in the next video. But this is my paragraph tag. This is my paragraph tag. Now, I don't want you to be confused about where I'm writing this. All I want you to know is that I opened my tag and I closed my tag. This P is the tag name. The tag name means that we're writing a paragraph. So the element is paragraph. That is just something that I want you to keep in mind. Again, as we go on, as we create more videos and create more things that will happen on our webpage, we'll see a little bit more about different elements. All right, we talked about the angle brackets. They are required. Remember, every time you open a tag, you have to close it, and the syntax for that are the angle brackets, right? And then when you close it, you need a slash. So we've gone over that already. And again, this is just essentially what almost every single tag or element will look like. So guys, let's take a look here. We talked a little bit about, in this first video, what HTML and CSS were, what they did. We talked about the bare bones shell, so the structure, which is essentially like an outline that tells you where your code is supposed to go. We talked a little bit about the angle brackets. We talked a little bit about the elements and the tag names, and that every time you open a tag, you always need to close it. So this was our first video in our HTML CSS course. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next up, in our next video, we're going to be going over some common elements. We're going to be actually creating things that will show up on our webpage, and then we will go over line breaks and comments. So yep, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.